welcome back to Founder to Founder. Today I am so excited to have Saloni with me from EcoEnclose. If you are one of our magazine customers, you receive our magazine in one of those poly mailers. I love EcoEnclose because they're ethical and sustainable, and I feel like if that's our mission, then that's what we should be working with. So today we are going to be doing a fun activity related to that, but first I'm going to have Saloni introduce herself.
Hey, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Saloni, and I'm the CEO of EcoEnclose. And as Arianna described, we're a leading provider of sustainable e-commerce packaging. And I just have a career history of work in the sustainability field. Prior to this, I worked in sustainable agriculture for 7 years, sort of setting up small sustainable agriculture businesses around the country. So running EcoEnclose is a bit of a dream come true because I get to sort of do two things. One is like work on creating packaging that builds towards my like sort of dream vision of like a truly circular economy. And then not only that, I get to work with thousands upon thousands of small businesses and medium-sized businesses all in the e-commerce space that are just like as passionate and committed to sustainability as we are. So it's just an incredible job.
That is so cool. I didn't know about your previous work either, so that's really cool to hear about. I definitely coming up with more questions in my head now.
Fun. Okay.
But before we get too far into it, I'm going to walk through a little bit of what we're doing today. So, on the note of sustainable and environmentally sound and kind of that circle of life of different materials, we are going to be making notepads. I have mine sandwiched here, but let me break it apart really quick. So, I always have scrap paper, so we're going to be making notepads out of recycled scrap paper. You can one of our brand guides are in here. I misprinted it, so we have those. I cut mine up into about I think it was like 4 inches by 5.5, like papers that were just not right from the printer. And then I'm not sure how you're doing yours, but I'm sandwiching it between 2 pieces of cardboard. Is that?
Yeah, you know what we did is we also not only do we have scrap paper in our lives, we also have a lot of scrap cardboard because we manufacture boxes. So I just took one of our corrugate pads and cut it into a 4.25 by 5.5 as well. So I'm with you.
Awesome. So we are going to sandwich those in, and then I'm using a little chip clip.
Oh my God. I was just going to press it with my thumbs. You're so on it.
They don't match. I thought.
I have a couple more I'm going to cut actually. So we're going to do that while we.
Perfect. Okay. Well, while we are prepping this, and then we'll show you guys how we're going to fasten these together. We're both using hot glue. But let me go ahead and get started a little bit. So I love talking about sustainability because it's not just being green and recycling anymore. It's definitely more of what the word actually means. Sustainable being like long-term, I can't even think of a better word than sustaining. Like continued processes that it just lasts longer. It's not just a quick fix. It's something that is supposed to leave like a legacy basically behind. And you mentioned the agriculture side of that. So how did you come into this business then from ag, and how do you see them, like, are they connected and overlapping in any way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll just very quickly on our story, I guess. So I worked, I've done a lot of different things in my background. And then, like I said, most recently I was doing sustainable agriculture work. And then my husband and I run the business together. And 6 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, we started looking for he started looking for a business to buy. And so he was looking at all different types of businesses, a lot of services businesses, a lot of work in the elderly care was like some of the things we were looking at. And then EcoEnclose, which was tiny at the time, it was like 4 employees and like 2 products. I mean, it was really small, but it was a really cool concept started by a woman who had also started Thirsties, which is a cloth diaper company. And so her name is Erin. And when she started Thirsties, she was like, I can't ship my cloth diapers in virgin plastic. And so she started this idea of like, can we get recycled content into poly mailers? And so when this, she didn't really want to do much with it after that. So when it went up for sale, I think I was not that interested in being part of the business endeavor with my husband. But when this one came up, it was like, okay, packaging was not like necessarily my passion point at that point, but certainly sustainable business was. And at the time, it was a very much smaller segment, but this idea of like, let's work with these sustainable businesses to create a future in which e-commerce, we always say, let's create a future in which e-commerce is a force for positive change. That was, again, a dream come true. And it's been interesting. I think because of my history in sustainable agriculture, I think I talk a lot more about concepts that other people in packaging don't. So if you see on our website, we've got these two parts to our mission. One is around circularity, which to me is like an endless loop of like recycling materials back into itself as much as possible. And then the other part is like when you have inputs into your packaging that have to be virgin, how can we think about whether or not the raw materials can be regenerative? And so that comes up in a lot of ways. So one common way that it comes up is PLA is becoming a more common question. People are like, oh, do you have a bioplastic PLA mailer? Because people get excited about it because they're like, oh, it's bioplastic and it's compostable. And because of my background in agriculture, I'm always like, no, we cannot go that. You know, I've gone really deep in the research in that. And because I've seen firsthand how degrading corn has been for our country, I mean, it's just been awful. And so many of our worst ecological problems have been driven by corn production. And so innately, like, I think because I come from that lens, it's like, we got to think about new inputs being regenerative. What are they doing to the soil? What are they doing to the water? What are they doing to land use transitions and things like that? So I think I probably bring lenses like that into the conversation more than I would if my whole history was in packaging, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely does. Just I don't know this, and I'm sure I can't be the only one. What does PLA stand for?
Oh yeah, it's PLA is like polylactic acid. It's like the chemical or the technical term for the type of plastic polymer that is made from corn, if that makes sense, or made from a certain type of starch, which is most commonly derived from corn.
Yeah, no, that definitely
So
makes
if
sense.
you see like I don't know, Eco Products makes these cups, like these plastic cups that are compostable. Those are made with PLA.
Okay. That is really cool. And I think the circularity of it, that's been a really big topic too. I think
Yeah.
it's been really cool to see so many companies making these initiatives. Granted, I feel like a lot of consumers have been like asking for this for a while. Um, I just graduated college like 2, 3 years ago now, which feels like a really long time. But a lot of my friends and I were talking because I remember when Coca-Cola came out with their recyclable Coke bottles or what their big initiative was. And a lot of us, we did it for one of our capstone like conversations. We were like, are they doing it because it's trendy or are they doing it for the right reasons? And I feel like that we touch on this a lot with like representation, but like even sustainable or like greenwashing and like trying to figure out like how companies are really integrating these processes into their business plans or if they're just doing it to get their gold star and then they kind of check out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting. I would say I've become a little bit more sensitive and thoughtful around. I used to be like really quick to say like, well, Coca-Cola is greenwashing or something like that. And I think as I start to dialogue, I've gotten the chance to dialogue a little bit more with like professionals within these companies. And what you realize is that a lot of times the people who are spearheading these efforts in these companies are like just as passionate about making change as we are, and they're just working in a bureaucracy and in a more complex, like, you know, they're public companies with shareholders, and so their ability to make changes are just slower. And so I've started to become a little bit more sensitive, and frankly, it's why sorry, I'm just going all over the place, but it's why I get really excited. Why one of our mission statements is like, how can we, it's EcoEnclose, make e-commerce or help catalyze e-commerce as a positive, like a force for positive change. One of the reasons I think I feel that way is because a lot of e-commerce brands are pretty independent. Like they can make change really quickly. They can say, well, tomorrow I'm going to just invest in 100% recyclable mailer, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get my customers to recycle them or send them back to me or reuse them. And I think like that, you can do that if you're like a medium to large to small size e-commerce brand that's independent. When you're
Right.
Coca-Cola or McDonald's, I just think you can't do it, you know?
Right. I mean, it is on such a larger scale too. And like you said, it's that bureaucracy or hierarchy of like change has to be approved. And then like, what does it do for, because I mean, I've started to have that dialogue and I've been trying to read as much as I can. I like to see all the perspectives before making decisions or judgments or whatever. I'm an ENFP, so that's like probably where that comes
Okay.
from.
Well said.
Right. And so, I mean, it is frustrating, and I feel like it is like encouraging though at the same time to see like these small changes happening because I feel like once there's that small wave, then there's going to be like bigger waves that come with it because it's like once you as a business understand how to implement it, then it will probably be easier to implement the next part of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll say, it's like, can you get the power of some of these larger companies behind it? Because that's sometimes what you need to create viable like technology advancements. So I think change is probably going to happen through a combination of like 5,000 e-commerce brands that are getting bigger every day that are becoming noticed, and they're like, okay, we want to invest in better technology solutions to allow, plastic to be better recycled, or we want, like, how can we collectively get 50% of plastic to be recycled in this country instead of 9%? But then when you get the funding of a Coca-Cola behind you, then you can start to invest in some of those as well. So it is going to be a collective effort.
Yeah, and it's good and bad, annoying, whatever, how much money really helps move
I
that
know.
process along. But yeah, so at the beginning, you said when you guys first bought the company, then there were only like 4 employees. What did that look like connecting with small business? Because from what I've seen, I found EcoEnclose because of other small businesses that I support. And I mean, More Magazine is also a very small business. I am the only person. We have 4 interns this summer who are great.
Congrats.
But
Exciting.
how did that, like, I feel like I'm jumbling a little bit here, but how was that connecting with small businesses? Were they already wanting eco-friendly packaging, or were you working to sell them and be like, this is affordable and it's better for the environment, and therefore, like, you're part of that change?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say we have actually had to do very little, or whether we have to or not, we haven't done very little convincing. So I think the people who come to us and start working with us are already sort of believers in the fact that these are the brands that have said, like, I care about the products that I'm making, and I'm only going to put sustainable materials in it or recycled materials in it, and I'm going to make sure I get to pay my supply chain ethically. And I think most brands like that, then they look and like, okay, we're about to ship our products. Like, do we ship it in something that has nothing to do with what we stand for? Or do we ship it in something that continues to represent what we stand for? So I think most people who come to our site and work with us are already convinced about that. That said, since then, we started to work with bigger and bigger brands. So like we work with Fall Raven. We've worked with Fall Raven from the very beginning, but like brands of that size, they start to talk a lot more about pricing. Like, they'll come to us sometimes and they're like, well, I really want to go with the most sustainable option out there, and it seems like you guys are it, but I can spend 10 cents less a bag and go with this other one that has 50% recycled content, and I save X $1,000,000 a year or something like that, or X $1,000 a year. And it starts to matter. So as we've grown, we've had to do more convincing. And that particularly is true with the larger brands they have all these different pressure points, I think. Whereas if I'm talking to an Etsy shop and she gets to make all of her decisions by herself, like, she's just deciding, like, this is what my values are and this is what I'm going to pay for.
Mm-hmm. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, I feel like once people are on your website, they're all probably already on the same page as you with that. But
that said, I think we should probably do more convincing. Like, I think we could work with more brands, and there's so many, I always think about it, it's a circle. Like, we have this, we call them our eco ally community, or people who are already believers, and we're all believers and we're working together. There's probably like a circle of brands that are on the outside that are starting to think about it, or maybe their customers are asking them to think about it more. And if we had more capacity, it would be really nice to sort of reach out to all those brands and do some more education and sort of community building.
yeah, I think I've seen a lot of like keep social and like putting like that community like effort back into like communities, and I feel like that would be such a cool space to be in. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you're familiar with Sustain the Mag. I interviewed their founder a couple months ago, and Reza, she's in Texas. They're doing amazing work, and she's talked about how the space of like sustainability and like ethical production, like what a welcoming space it is. So I feel like that would be such a cool conversation to have, especially with people who are already like supporting EcoEnclose too.
Yeah, that would be really fun. And
Yeah.
you're right. I think there's been, I don't know what has happened, but it does feel like a more positive, welcoming, collaborative space now than it felt like 10 years ago. It used to feel like sort of combative, like us versus them. And now it does seem like, and maybe it's just the people that we attract, and, we all attract each other if we're of like-minded, like, we want to work together and make this happen.
Right. And I mean, it's a lot of the accessibility to the education behind it too, because I feel like when recycling and being green and sustainable like first happened or whatever, there was like a lot of gatekeeping of
Yeah.
information, and I feel like now that, especially with like, I use Instagram the most, there's so much information out there that it makes it easier to start those conversations. And I think it's us being more welcoming, not welcoming, us being more confident going into those communities because we have that education. And I feel like
Hmm.
if you have that confidence, it's easier to be welcoming because then you don't feel like you have to do all of the educating. And I think that
Totally.
helps balance.
Yeah, definitely. And you can have different perspectives and sort of have a respectful dialogue about it.
Yeah, of course. So how is it having do you ever feel pressure being eco-enclosed, sustainable packaging to like keep upping it or like making sure that you're checking all the boxes of like recyclable, compostable, biodegradable, and like ethical pay for your workers and fair treatment and everything like that? How do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple questions there, I guess. It's like one is our product set. And I think we used to feel like so much pressure to be everything to everybody. And then we sat down and this happened a couple of years ago, and then we tightened it up this year and just like sat down and be like, let's not worry about what other people ask for and instead do our own research to figure out what is truly the sustainability vision. And that's where we sat down and wrote like, okay, we've got a true goal now, which is like our goal is truly circular. And to me, what it means to be truly circular is that the packaging that we sell has 100% post-consumer waste in it and is as easily recyclable as possible. And it doesn't get downcycled, it gets recycled back into itself. And so you've got this sort of beautiful endless loop of materials. And then the other part of that, again, as I said before, like this aspect of if we have to put virgin material into it, let it be regenerative or at least net neutral for the environment. Once we had that framework, it helped us make sense of other things that people were asking for. So it began to say, okay, people were like, well, I want to get your paper mailer because I want my customers to compost it. I want a compostable mailer. And then I started saying, okay, guys, I know the trend. There's a lot of trendiness around composting or e-commerce packaging, but that's actually not good for the environment, right? I started talking to like all the composting facilities, and they're like, we don't want your clean packaging. If you have clean packaging, design it for recyclability, not for compostability. If you have food packaging where you're going to have a lot of food waste in it, then design it for compostability. So I think what happened is like when I started doing the framework, doing the room like 10 composting facilities at the beginning of the year about this, I just started saying, okay, instead of designing my packaging for what everybody asks for, let's do the research to figure out what we stand for and what we think is the right decision for the environment. And then let's build towards that. And that step has made decisions so much easier. So now I think of an example. I look at like a paper mailer of ours, right? And now I look at it and it's like, there's some things that I wanted to get better. Like we have a paper mailer that's 90% post-consumer waste and then the 10% is post-industrial. How do I get it to 100% post-consumer? It has something like, it's called a seal strip. It's a thing you take off that reveals the self-seal adhesive. That seal strip is made of virgin material and it has a silicone coating on it. So it's landfill. It has to go to the landfill. So I keep thinking, how do we make that recycled and recyclable? So it allows me to look at each product and say, what do I need to do to get it closer and closer to our vision? If that makes sense. So it's really started to allow us to be more focused in the innovations that we want to pursue. So that's on the product side. And then, yeah, I mean, I think people are what matters, right? Like, so how you treat your people and how you pay your people and treat them and the benefits you give them. But that's like true with an EcoEnclose and then also across your supply chain. So we also made the decision we have one product, this really low volume product that's sourced from Europe, but everything else is sourced from North America. And the main reason we did it is we're so small, like I can't go to Asia to vet everything. So we have a domestic supply chain where I'm very close to our suppliers. We can get on the phone and call them anytime. We've audited most of them. We visited them. We visit them fairly regularly. And it just allows us to have a comfort with the humanity, I guess, across our supply chain.
No, that's amazing that you're like really putting that work in to, walk the walk and not just talk the talk. And then staying centered. I feel like that is something that will always make things easier when you kind of refocus on your missions and your values to help guide you. Because I mean, that's why you got started in the first place.
Yeah. And I did it for the product set. And then I sometimes, you don't do it in like your personal life or some other aspects of your life. And you realize like, that's what you need. You need to just, if you do the vision and you figure out your framework of any part of your life or your work, then everything else sort of falls into place.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. I feel like from these conversations, I feel like I've realized so much of what we talk about, like in a business sense, is so applicable to like your personal life and like holding true to like what you value and what you care about and like being intentional in that.
Yeah, exactly.
That is.
But now I need to make the time to do it in my personal life.
That's always the problem.
Yes, exactly.
But okay, I'm gonna jump back to our activity because my glue is dripping.
Oh no. Okay, perfect. We got mine.
Yes, and then I have my glue gun, and what we're gonna be doing is putting the glue right on the binding like you would see on a normal notepad. I don't have an example one. Do you have yours?
Well, I have mine. I made one earlier this morning, so it's like you can see. Can you see that?
That looks good.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. So I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I always forget how hot glue
I
is.
know. Almost very dangerous.
I know. I see the steam coming off of it, and
I
it's
feel
like
a
one of
little.
those things that I want to touch, but
It
you're
is
not.
way too hot for this much steam to be being released into our confits room.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
Okay. How's yours looking?
not
Don't
too.
touch it.
I know. I touched it.
Okay.
I thought it cooled down, and then as the longer I touched it, the hotter it felt. All right. This is not a strict how-to. Don't do that part.
Well, I've learned that you can also do it with rubber cement, and I just couldn't find rubber cement, and this seemed like a quicker.
That's what I was gonna use too, and I like could not find it. And honestly, since quarantine, I hate going to stores now.
Yeah.
I just
Okay. I think I've got mine. My first one isn't well glued, but
yeah, I'm gonna let mine dry for a second, and then I'll do a reveal at the end.
all right.
Perfect, sweet. I seriously have so much recycled paper, and I got into kind of trying to make more of what we have in our household, like more of a circle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've been doing the paper making at home, making it a pulp, and then straight.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been real. It's like so just relaxing because you're just like doing it, and then like now that it's summer outside, it kind of just dries, and so
Do you have any papers?
not
I'd love to see them.
now. I'll send you one.
I
But
did one exercise like that with my kids, like over the summer to like repulp paper so they would see it. And it was so thick and we couldn't really use it. I feel like I didn't have the right materials.
well, I'll send you a few of them.
Yes, that would be awesome.
I love them. I think it's really cool, and it's like I don't know, because then I hear stuff like when you say you recycle, and they're like, well, not all your recycling even gets recycled, and so I was like, well, I'm gonna just start recycling all of our paper then and do that. So
Love it. Very impressive.
yeah, it's been really fun. I feel like my
What
partner.
kind of blender do you use?
It's one that I got for free in college.
Okay.
Moving out of there, like oh
Like, I don't think I would put it in my blender I make a smoothie in, but maybe I would.
no, it is so hard to clean out afterwards. And so once I did it, I was like, okay, this is the paper
This
blender
is it.
now.
I love it. I love it.
And then, okay, so you mentioned the composting because so I have one of those bins that sits on our kitchen counter, and so I
Yeah.
put all our food waste in there.
Yes.
And it's also so wild since I mean now, so like normally, you take your trash out to the end of the street once a week. We only do it like once every other week, every 3 weeks
Yeah.
now because of composting. We like are putting our food waste like into our bin outside, and like we use it for the garden in the spring, and then like the paper and like whatever we recycle or whatever we can recycle. Like it's insane how much waste is able to just be put back in a different way and not just
Yeah.
thrown away.
It's the coolest thing. And I'll just say, like, I'm a huge composting nerd. Like, I'm obsessed with composting. And because of that, and again, because of my ag background, I'm like very particular about making sure that the things that go into a compost bin are actually like beneficial to soil. Which is, why the packaging, like clean packaging doesn't quite belong there. But yes, isn't it amazing to visually see?
Yeah.
Like, it's just the coolest thing to be like, I used to take my trash out once a week and now it's, once every 2 weeks. And eventually as you get more cognizant about it, it's like once a month you have trash. It's really a cool thing.
It's insane. And like especially having like a tangible result like that
Yeah.
is so cool. Okay, so you mentioned the composting because now I'm like second guessing. I went to a composting webinar when we first started because I wanted to make sure I was like putting the right things in because I know like pizza grease on boxes, like you're not supposed to compost that. And so you mentioned with the packaging. Can you touch back on that?
Totally.
I am not sure if I'm composting the right stuff now.
No, you are. I mean, it sounds like you are because I have a feeling 99% of your compost is probably food waste or coffee grinds and things like that. And so I'm trying to think of an example. Do I have? Yeah, I've got paper mailers here. Do I? I don't have.
I was going to say because I've gotten not mailers, but I bought these I don't even know what it's called, like the laundry detergent things that like you can just put in, and it said that the packaging was compostable, so I put it in my compost bin.
Yes, it's so here's what I will say about the Sustainable Packaging Coalition does a really beautiful job laying this out. So it's the idea that I always like to say a paper packaging. I'm like, do I have a paper package here? No, I don't. Of course I don't. Okay, here's an example. This is a glassine bag, something we sell. It's like it's an alternative to a poly mailer. So it's a paper bag that you can put your apparel in before you ship it. It's like if you want a protective layer. That's an example of something that is technically recyclable and compostable. And if in that scenario, you should always be recycling it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The main reason is that it's better for the environment to recycle something than to compost it, because you've already put a lot of your energy and resources into the making of that material. So then let's get it recycled so it can be back to something usable, offsetting the need for more virgin inputs. That's the first reason. And then the second reason is that compost is really sensitive to contaminants. And so if you think about it, you're literally creating like all of this compost output that then the composting facility has to sell. They want their output to be as healthy, nutrient rich as possible. And then all of that stuff ends up back in our soil. So what you don't want is like, you don't want heavy metals, or you don't want ink toxins or adhesives, things that are technically, you can still pass the ASTM certification for compostability and still leave these types of things in soil. And so what we really want to do is have compost be like all of our organic matter. And when I say organic matter, it's like the food waste and the coffee grinds and the leaves and the grass. Like that is a rich humus, right? Like that's what you want. Like that's the kind of thing that you would put on your garden. And it's like, this is going to create like a thriving nutrient rich system, a biodiverse soil. When you start to put in like a bioplastic, so I don't know if those pods that you're talking about are bioplastic. So those are sort of synthetic materials that are made with like corn or sugarcane or something like that, that technically might meet a compostability standard. There's two things that happen. One is that there's some like contaminants that you put into your, like again, the inks and the adhesives, but also like it creates like a really wet output. So if I call a composting facility, they'll say like, I'll accept that, but I don't want it. Because if all of a sudden I've got like a huge bin full of these plastic bags that are compostable, it makes my output like wet. It makes it not very nutrient rich. I can't sell it. I can't run my business, because a big part of running my business is selling my output. And then I have to sell it to like a construction site instead of selling it to an organic farm. So does that make sense? So that's like what you're seeing is that like Oregon, the composters in Oregon used to accept bioplastics. And then I think it was last year they stopped accepting them because they were like, it's wreaking havoc on our ability to sell our output. So that's where it's like, if something says compostable on it and your composter accepts it, go ahead and compost it. But it's really, as you're designing your packaging for recycling is like a better outcome for the environment, even though recycling still has so many problems. We have to fix the recycling supply chain, and it's a huge part of what we're working on.
That's amazing to hear that you're working on it. I mean, I've seen a lot of articles, and I feel like that's another hard thing sometimes, is seeing all of these problems and like not quite knowing what you can do. But I think that's a great point of, if you can recycle something, recycle it, because of that energy that's already been put into it. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
When you say it like that. Thank you for walking through
Yeah,
that.
sorry, I could talk about this forever. So I probably went way too far down the weeds. And you're right, recycling has so many issues. And if you are a consumer and you're like, what do I do like to fix this? I would say the number one thing you could do is look for products that are made with post-consumer recycled waste. Because if we all demand more and more of it, like the market forces will say, okay, let's invest in the technology to better sort and remanufacture with recycled content. And so that's been the most powerful change in my life for the last 5 years of like, when I buy something, I'm like, oh, is it recycled? Can it be made recycled? If so, let me get the recycled version. And I think, I'm only one person, but right, if we can all do it, it starts to become a big deal.
Yeah, no, I think it's so good that like this conversation is happening, because we have so much power as consumers. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the brands have to cater to us, or else they don't have anyone buying their product. Right. So I think asking questions. I know, like, I used to, before I started the magazine, I was like trying to go the influencer route or whatever. And I remember I'd get approached by brands, and I was in college. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a free swimsuit, like whatever, and we can work out X, Y, and Z. And now, like with the magazine and like just having my values like set harder and like more aligned, I'm asking like, is this sustainably made? What does your garment worker like policy look like, and different things like that. And I feel like the more that we push and ask for those questions, the more that brands will have to like change their pace.
Totally.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you one final question. It's my surprise question. and then we'll do a reveal of our notepad.
Okay, of our note cards. They're
Yeah.
working for us.
What do you do that inspires yourself?
Sorry, say it one more time.
What do you do that inspires yourself?
Oh God. Well, I have two things I'm going to say
Mhm.
because you've really now put me on the spot. And I'm going to answer it maybe a little different than you intended it. I would say the first thing is that I am very lucky to live in Colorado. And what I've learned about myself is that I'm not in the mountains doing something mildly challenging physically, at least every third week. Like it really takes my inspiration away. So the flip side is like to go to the mountains and be on a hike or take a canoe ride or, you know, take a mountain biking ride is like the thing that maybe, yeah, it inspires and it recenters me. And it puts me well, and I'm lucky because if by working in sustainability, it means that like when you're out there, you have a real connection to the thing that you're sort of fighting for and working towards. And then, you know, I've got kids and they're young and they're just amazing. And they're much more deeply passionate about the environment than anybody I knew was at their age. And so that is a sign probably of the fact that they, you know, are raised by parents who run EcoEnclose, but also just like a sign of the times. And so it's been really incredible to like what happened the other day. Like we've got this part of our yard that's like, I mean, it's overrun with thistle. And my husband Kyle was like, should we just look into an organic pesticide for this instead of like constantly trying to pick it every single weekend because we're spending 2 hours every weekend picking it. And Winston, who's my oldest, he's 7, and he was like crying. He was like, why would you even think about putting toxins down that might harm me or might harm the rabbits? And, you know, he's still like processing this, but it really checked us. And we're like, okay, I guess we're not doing this. And I just like, there's a lot of hope when you see that type of passion at so young. And I think it's going to sustain these, you know, a lot of kids are like that and it's just going to sustain as they get older.
That is so cool. Oh, that
So
was such a
fun.
good answer. I love that. And especially being in Colorado, you're surrounded by what
It's
you're
really
going to
nice.
expect.
It's really nice.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And you mountain bike. That is so cool.
I don't have as much time as I used to. I don't have as much time as I used to, but it is fun.
That is awesome. I have a bunch of other questions on that. But let's reveal
Oh,
our
yes.
notepads. I'm going to take off my cardboard. Do you already have yours take? Oh,
Well, I
you-
didn't do the
oh,
top layer, so I just have a backing and then I've got this. So
That was smarter. Yeah, I might have to reveal this later.
okay, well, should I write on it? Here, I'm gonna just write, I don't know. I'm gonna write a little note to my neighbor here. Okay, we wrote a note. Okay. Oh, got it.
I love it. I also wrote my first note on it.
Oh my God, thank you.
Thank you so much for making time today. I'm so appreciative. I will add the link below for EcoEnclose if anyone wants to learn more. And I know we have a lot of small businesses, so if you're not using them already, I highly recommend them. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on your really wonderful magazine and all the work you're doing. And thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you. See you guys next time.